Can I welcome other panelists up to the stage, please? Thank you. Okay, I don't need. You're going to do that? Yeah, do the do. I'll sit in the middle. I'm going to break. So this is our final panel of the day. So stick around. This is the last chance to learn something today. And yeah, I mean, I think that how much more we can add to that incredibly packed and slideshow, I don't know, but I shall try and prize a little more out. So we've already heard from these two gentlemen previously. So would you like to introduce yourself, sir, and what you do?
Yes, I'm Miika Luotio. I'm a Finnish guy working for a German games publisher called Flaregames. We publish.
In Canada. That's good.
Yeah, and I'm all the way in Canada. So we do. We publish free-to-play mobile games globally. So we work with developers all around the globe, and yeah, that's
cool.
me.
So we've got sort of three different very different kind of publishers here, and different levels and different types of games. So I want to ask if you can answer it in not 4 slides, but yeah, you might be able to. But of all the things, what is the absolute core role of the publisher now? I mean, like you listed quite a lot of things. Is it really marketing and discovery is obviously the biggest challenge right now in any app store? It's getting out. There's so much content. So is that really the biggest thing? Or is it about supporting development, funding development? Is that something that people do? Didn't notice that in there. Well, that's part of the.
Yeah, I mean, no, it is. Funding is a part of development. Still, we do fund, some pretty big productions with our partners. I think it's really case by case. I was thinking about this question a lot because it's a really good one. Like how to answer it in a concise way is challenging, but I think it's really to support the developer and enable them to do their job. And the developer's job is to ship a highly engaging game. So what does that mean? It means something different for every developer. For some developers, it means, oh wow, these guys have a really great concept, but they don't really understand how to run it live. So let's help them in that area, make a great live ops plan together, and enable them to do this with the tools that we have. For others, it might be, wow, they really know how to run a game and get it out there. But if only they had the users, and it's a marketing thing. So I think it's really support and really understanding what they need to enable them to do the best work.
That's a very good answer. So you're plugging in around where they. You're filling out. There's quite a lot of things these days a developer has to do. It's not like a fire and forget anymore. And so you're kind of filling up the bits they can't do, basically.
Yeah, and focus is everything. We want our developers to focus on making great games.
Yeah.
I mean, if a developer is thinking about all these other things, they're taking time away from the moment-to-moment gameplay, and we want them thinking about that.
Would you agree with that, Mick?
Yeah, I think funding is a big part of publishing these days. But I think increasingly I'm seeing value in being able to incubate some cool game concepts. I mean, I get countless of pitches that are just concept decks that are amazing, but there's hardly any prototype, or it's really rough. And I think there's a value that publishers can give with the know-how that they're looking at a lot of games on a weekly basis. They're going through, shifting through a lot of games and publishing a lot of games. That know-how can be kind of given in early stages as well. And I think that's a new angle that I think is interesting.
Yeah. What do you say, Andrew? Come on.
I'm pretty.
It's hard to be third, isn't it?
To be third, yeah. All I can do is add on. But I mean, I think from another perspective, a publisher has seen a lot more games, so that expertise comes from a lot of failure, as well as success. So a publisher can also kind of look into if it's a particular genre or a particular game style or directed at a particular market. They can actually bring in a lot of expertise to say, hey, I brought up a little bit on our talk, but the UI UX failures that can happen in a particular language, or how a market will respond differently, or is there an event system that they might require?
Okay.
They've already seen failures.
So it's experience. You've seen what's definitely not going to work. So you avoid repeating the same mistakes. But okay, that's good. That's 3 different answers. So that was very good. So I think kind of flipping that around. I mean, as publishers, what is it that you're looking for? What is the number one thing that makes you go, boom, these are the guys? Are you kind of mainly looking at the team and what they've kind of done before? Is it like an amazing new game mechanic? Is it like an understanding of, I don't know, the kind of business, the free-to-play live ops, or what is it that you kind of really mainly look at? What's the one that makes you get excited?
So it's been interesting because that has changed a lot. Like in the last 2 years, actually, at Flaregames, for example, we started looking at super experienced mobile development teams that are small but extremely like veteran. But we noticed that that doesn't always guarantee everything. So if even you have the most experience behind, like combined experience of hundreds of years, that doesn't like guarantee anything in these days. And actually, we realized that sometimes even the small teams that have a few years experience can do more magical stuff when it comes to mobile games. So we've kind of started to open up our mind in terms of looking at more smaller developers that are a little bit more indie in terms of what they're doing, because the tools that are available these days just allow people to do faster iterations and go to mistakes faster and be able to kind of fail faster and to get to success faster in terms of like making a really fun game, you know, in a shorter time span. So realizing that, we are looking at agility is one of the things, and being able to be lean is one of the key things that the guys can kind of iterate and try things out, break stuff out, and you know, improve based on that. So that's something that we're looking at these days a lot.
So you're I mean, see, that's quite refreshing that you're interested in. You're a publisher that are interested in relatively new, maybe not kind of brand new, but you don't have to be super. You don't have to have a portfolio of like 20 games published before, that have all made millions before they come and talk to you guys. Then.
Yeah, basically we just look at, have you guys done some mobile games before? And that's like, okay, you've done mobile games before. That's good. So you know, let's see what you have, and that's usually the kind of minimum requirement. Obviously, experience adds to the whole due diligence, and you know, that just gives a confidence booster. But I don't think it should be a deciding factor anymore. I think you should just have a wide funnel in terms of looking at developers out there.
Yeah. Would you? What's your approach? What are you looking for? What?
I'm pretty much just rephrasing in one perspective. I think as a publisher, you're usually an investor, right? And especially if you're looking into a particular developer, sometimes the state of the game, they're really happy with it. They're looking at it from their own eyes. I think a lot of the time you're looking at what their vision is. When you ask them the right questions to kind of see where is that going, do they have the foresight to see, well, what happens when you launch? Is there a longer term plan to provide content? You know, making sure that they have all the pieces in place. But again, kind of looking at it from an investor perspective, I agree perfectly well with that. It's just, you can't be just saying, okay, you have 15 years of mobile experience. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be very successful at all.
They could be 15 bad years, couldn't they?
Well, that's it.
Very lean.
Because if you look at it, I mean, in the market, investors don't really put money into developers. They put it into publishers.
Yeah.
You look at all the investment, it's usually into a publisher. It's kind of.
Well, there's also a bit of a blurring of the lines, I guess, these days in certain. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But
he's itching to get in here. I know there's a bullet of 50 ideas.
No, I mean, I think, you know, I don't know if I drove it home in my talk, that 5-tool analogy. I mean, we're looking for excellence in a particular area, and I know there are a few of you out here who I've asked a question to. That's sort of a universal question I like to ask when I'm getting to know a developer. It's like, I'm going to go, I phrase it differently, but it's like, I'm going to go back and talk to my team back in LA and kind of explain who you guys are. Like, who are you? Like, what's great about you? Like, why you and not some other developer? And having something to hang your hat on, like, it's because we have the best production processes in the business. We never miss a date, and we are dialed in. We execute. Or like, it's because we love strategy games, and all we do is strategy. We live, breathe strategy games. That's what we want to do. Or maybe we just really love live ops. We love optimizing. We love tweaking. Everyone loves live ops.
It's just great.
It's amazing, right? But excellence in one area, and that kind of makes up for sort of because no developer is the best designer in the world, the best at live ops, the best at back-end tech. You're not the best at everything. No one is. And so, but we want you to be sort of the best in a particular function.
So I kind of segues into a couple of points to made here. My next question you're talking about it being, you know, as an investor, and you're talking about you want you to leave you with something. So like, in the typical, you must see quite a few games, I'm guessing. That's probably what you do a lot of days. So how can developers best pitch you? What are the tips of just putting together that kind of best pitch? You know, what is it you really want? I mean, you're saying you want what the thing you're best at, but is there kind of some do's and don'ts you can give for pitches?
I mean, I think that the idea of that pitch is that when I close that deck or walk away from that meeting, I should very clearly understand what that thing is. I should know, oh, okay, here's why I should go make a case and stand up in a room full of 10 people staring at me and asking me why I should make a case for this developer to be our partner.
Yeah.
So like hanging your hat on that thing and making it very, very clear, I think is the best piece of advice. The other is relationship building. I think that most of our relationships that we have with our current partners did not just happen from one meeting, like at all. It happened from multiple trips in either direction, from multiple meetings at conferences, from us passing on multiple projects. So, just because you show us something and it's not for us at the given moment, that could be for a variety of reasons. It could be because our slate we've got a comparable game, or we've got, too many games at once, or we're just not interested in that genre at the moment, or what. It might not even be that we don't like the game itself, So it's keep that conversation going, try to solicit feedback, really listen, and really develop those relationships, because oftentimes 2 years later you will end up working with that person.
Cool. Also, get drunk and take embarrassing photographs. I've heard that's very effective.
Definitely.
So, but what do you want to see when people come to you with a pitch deck? Or what does it look like?
Yeah, I think number one, what I actually care about, and I think at Flare we look at and value the most is, like, if you give us a prototype or build of your game and it captures literally the whole company, starts playing it organically, that's when we are like, okay, we have something magical here.
Yeah.
And you might have the most beautiful pitch deck or the most ugliest pitch deck, but if the game the build itself doesn't pick up organically around the studio and our publishing folk, that people start playing it like there's no tomorrow. If that happens, then there's something there, and I believe in playing the game, and I really believe in the fact that if you feel that your concentration is off out of that build or game for whatever reason, it's missing something most likely. Sometimes that can be remedied and imagined on top of it. Okay, it's just missing the meta game, so I'm not playing it for weeks on end, but it has to have that addictiveness.
Well, I guess then you're looking at things that are quite far along to be able to. It's not like that's kind of slightly different to the incubation period, because then it already has to grab you.
Yeah, totally. And the way we approach things is like we're kind of honest for developers when they give us something super rough. So we're like, okay, well, if I put this build for the rest of the company, it's so rough that it's probably not going to pick that momentum that people can't put it down. But that's not to say that the concept would be bad or not good. Okay. So the incubation part there comes in where I think publishers should be able to kind of give advice and spar developers to kind of add the missing pieces. Sometimes it's very little things that are missing there, and it could be amazing, Yeah.
Okay. You get third again, Andrew, unfortunately. Yeah. What do you want to see in a deck? I mean, what is it? The core things just have to be in there for you.
I think it goes back to a previous point I made. I think, again, you're going to be working with these people for a long time. If they're, I like the idea of if the game inspires the whole company, but I think the people also need to inspire that. So when you're talking to them and they're not. They can't pitch like sometimes you receive like a 45-page pitch, and they're like, this is every single system we have. And you're like, okay, can you come back with something that I can almost give us?
How long do you want? I'm trying to get as much specifics for people. Yeah. Is it 5 PowerPoint pages? Is it 10? Is it? I mean, what to just give you that initial.
I hate to go back to like the business example, but it's an elevator pitch, right? Yeah. And then that's always either the first contact point, and then I think then when you get into I like your point about meeting several times. When you meet several times and you want to get more information, see where their vision is, and see kind of where the publisher can help with some aspects, and where I like the other point you brought up. Where are their actual attributes? What are they bringing to the table? But yeah, I think you can't give someone like 400 pages and then expect them to read it.
No.
Yeah, there are certainly things you don't want to do that I think could be rules, but I think it's really difficult to get, because if there was that rule, like, I'd be the richest guy in the room, sitting up in the corner of the room, just like handing out golden tickets to people, right? So, like, I mean, it's just so case by case, because every publisher perceives things differently. Yes, don't overload. Be able to articulate your ideas. There's certain don'ts, but the do's I think is really specific to the team.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I mean, I think that's like it was one of the reasons we kind of do these big indie pitches. We think it's a useful service, because I think if you can't excite media or publisher, whoever, or even convey in 3 minutes what your game is about and why it's interesting, and then you've kind of got to go back and start your pitch again, because that's longer than you're going to get in most cases, I think, to be considered. But okay, and from a business perspective, how much knowledge and how much, are you expecting the developers to come to you to have, really thought through the business models, the business case, and projections and all that sort of stuff? Was that your job? I'm starting this side because I think it's unfair. It's always been second or third, so harsh on the man.
I mean, I think you're not expecting every developer to understand the whole business landscape. But again, if they're coming towards saying, this is what we're looking for, what we're hoping you can provide. I liked your example during the last presentation about 2012 versus 2016. I think most of the developers now they understand what they're missing. Yeah. So I think in any communication point, it's really good to be very upfront with, hey, I think we understand this live ops thing, or we understand this other thing, and we would like in any potential future partnership to move forward with this. From the business perspective, I think it's always something that, depending on the company, depending on where everything is, you need to work together to kind of find it out. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of
it's fine.
So in terms of developers presenting business cases, for me that's usually kind of the tail end of once you actually receive the pitch and the game is awesome, and you're like, okay, how do we do this amazing thing together? Yeah. And that's usually some developers are good at it, and they're usually the ones that do a lot of work for hire. They'll give you numbers ready-made, and that's all nice, but I don't think it's a requisite by any means. Yeah. Because the way I think a good publisher should be able to just call up on any developer and just jog a business case and just build the numbers on a sheet in a 1-hour phone call. Usually doesn't take longer than that. So you understand what's your development cost, what type of profit share you're going with, and so forth. Those are like kind of the tail end things, and they're usually already developers almost always have those in the mind, even if they don't write them in the concept text. So they know what's their burn rate. So usually that's not rocket science by any means, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the points being made. I'll say that it can be a turnoff to a publisher when a developer, I mean, if you know what your numbers are going to be and should be, and you really know, fantastic. But if you see something and they're like, hey, we're looking for 5% day 30 retention, and you've got games in your portfolio that are doing 15%, and that's what it takes for what you want.
They've killed the whole
thing. They've kind of killed it. They've kind of shot themselves in the foot. So in that regard, less can be more. I mean, if the business case isn't obvious, you're talking about, I haven't seen too many people pitch me something that has subscription models in it yet. I'm sure I will start to. That might be interesting to see okay, what's your perspective on why subscription is going to work here, because it's kind of not proven yet. But for things like, hey, I'm making an RPG, oh, you're Scopely, you've got Walking Dead, you don't need to really tell us sort of why a mobile gacha-based RPG is going to work,
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Just as an additive point, conversely, as a warning to, I think, developers looking for publishers, if you start seeing crazy stats coming right away, oh yeah, you need to achieve this value before we pay out something. I saw a lot of publishers doing that when I was on the development side, and they're like, oh, you need to achieve this, and then if you achieve that, we'll give you a little bit more and a little bit more. Because I remember one where we had a development deal, and they're like, we'll give you $1 million. And when you actually start reading the deal, and it was like, no, wait, up front it's $30,000.
Yeah.
And then if, so it was you're never going to get there. So just as a warning point, you can run away from that.
That segues nicely into my next point. What I mean, obviously every deal is different. I get that, but typically, what are the core elements of the deal? Is it kind of money up front to cover the production and then some sort of revenue share? Is that as simple as it gets, or is it a lot more sort of fiddly than that?
I'll take it.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that I think I'm kind of amazed at is looking at normal publishing deals in terms of profit share. What publishers give developers seem to be really unfair. Not in terms of being equitable for both, but in terms of, because we're building services. I think we should be publishers should be driving towards more like a 50-50 situation, where they can actually say that, hey, we're on the same boat, because once the game is out and while it's in development, we should have the same recoup pool. We should be standing in the same same boat, and whatever happens, and I think that's something that I'm hoping to see more, because we're building services, and especially when it's a free-to-play game. If it's a premium game, that's a whole different ballpark, right?
Yeah.
But if you're doing free-to-play games, you gotta be able to offer incentive for the developer, and both that the publisher also feels that they're in the same level of investment in terms of how quickly they can get to profit and how quickly they can make money, out of a good game.
Yeah. No, okay. Feel free to cover this with details from the deal with the IG.
I don't disagree with that theoretically, but I think in practice it's a little bit more complicated because, I think if the risk profile is equal, and I don't just mean from a financial standpoint, like there's sweat equity and it's a little bit of a qualitative assessment, totally agree. But I think, a lot of the deals that we're doing, we're coming in very, very early. We're often bringing IP that costs multiple millions of dollars to acquire. We're oftentimes financing a production with 30 plus people that's going to cost multiple millions. So I don't think a 50-50 deal is fair there, actually, at all. And if a developer is financing their $3 million production and acquiring the IP, then yeah, let's flip the rev share, totally. But so I think it is about the risk profile. We have cool jobs because I've been in a form of business development my whole life, and typically business development is about getting the best deal for your company. Yeah. And in free-to-play games, it's not. It's about getting the best deal for both sides. It's actually about getting the worst acceptable deal for both sides, because you need both sides to feel rewarded at the end of the day. If our developer partner, if IGG is really annoyed that we're pulling too much profit off The Walking Dead and they don't feel that they're being rewarded, well, we're screwed because we need those guys. And hey, guess what? If we feel like we're just paying out and we're not being rewarded for the investment that we made, well, they're screwed because the game is dead. We're not going to market it anymore. So you need to find this scenario where both sides actually legitimately feel good at the end of the day going home when they look at their bank account based on the work they've done and the investment they've made. And it's totally case by case, I think, and by genre, developer, everything.
I expect that. That's fine. You'd like to add?
Just my last point, I agree perfectly. It depends on the deals. You've seen that going back to the whole point I was making. Like you do see some of those tiered deals where maybe where the publisher and developer are too cautious and they're coming in and they're adding in. Okay, well you have to hit these benchmarks before we do higher payout. I've been on negotiated some deals where it was kind of interesting where. We gave all of the emphasis on the developer in order to achieve something, and then we were giving away a much higher percentage. So they needed to do a very good job in order to get that higher percentage. But that being said, I wanted to add that final point. I think a really good case study is King. They had Candy Crush Saga, and they were trying to push Tencent to grab it for a long time. It took a year and a half. And a year and a half later, it came out. They still got the same deal that happened at the beginning, which is the 1090. Yeah. So King taking 10. And by that time, we know the Chinese market, it changes really quickly. Yeah. There was already a perfectly great copy. It's probably the third generation copy. Yeah. So it already was integrated into all the social media, and they could never get Candy Crush to work. So in certain markets, I bring that up because certain markets there is a monopoly, and you should just give it up. Just go for it.
And they did terribly for King. I remember the whole situation was
silly. It was really
overall
silly.
They struggled home with that $5 billion sale. It was tough. But no, it's a fair point. The 10-cent deal is very interesting. I guess that segues into another point really. As you guys as publishers, do you prefer to work on a global basis or market by market when we're talking to?
IGG,
China and
yeah. Well, IGG, we actually earlier on we de-emphasized China. So Castle Clash, we took the 1090 deal and we just gave it to them for the Chinese market. Maybe we negotiated better because we're a Chinese company. I'm not sure. I wasn't involved with the deal. It was a couple years ago. But we like to go global. Again, making sure that the games can go everywhere. Yeah. Because as soon as you can, as a publisher, as soon as you can hit that scale, it's actually pretty cheap. Yeah. You're adding a couple more people, a couple more expertise for the different markets. It's much easier to do a global. I've seen deals that really did not work where one particular publisher had these languages or region. You have that other issue, like a language or region, what are you doing with? And then, this and that. And then, especially on mobile, you're kind of screwed. You're on an area where it's affecting each other. We had one deal where we actually partnered Android versus iOS.
Oh, wow.
and the game failed for sure. I bet nobody's even heard of it.
Because you basically you're saying you needed one person really focusing on the whole.
Well, certain markets I think you can break up. Like I think the Chinese market's a very standalone market. Some of the Southeast Asian markets are very standalone. So you can license out those to publishers that are better in those regions, especially since they have different app stores to deal with. But when you have like the English, French, German regions, I think if the publisher has the capacity, it's much easier to go with one in that region.
Okay, fair enough. Anything to add? You don't have to.
I mean, we tend to take global rights. We would be open to conversations that made sense. Otherwise, if there was especially if it was with an interesting Eastern strategic that was doing some work over there, and maybe we would take it in the West. But typically, we don't really want our developers like grinding it out on the business development side. Like we want them thinking about the game. So, not that we wouldn't be open to parsing out rights for specific opportunities, but if you're only taking North America, then they got to go figure out Europe. They got to go figure out China and the rest of Asia. It's like they got to do that's work that's taking away from them spending time with their team and operating a game. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I think segueing forward from that as well is like, are you looking to have like, are you doing things on a game by game basis? Like, are deals typically game by game, or is it you're trying to get a publishing deal with a studio for multi games or for X years, or what typically you're looking for?
Well, I think it's increasingly more about the teams, and if you see a team that can deliver an awesome game, and they have this kind of recipe in terms of like, especially small teams that have like a really good coherency within the team, and they execute something really good in a relatively short time. That's when you should be looking as a publisher, looking at the situation and saying these guys can definitely repeat something as cool as this is. Obviously different game, but those type of teams you should be able to kind of identify, and obviously if you can, obviously that's a good opportunity to have multi-title type of deals. So that's something that's a really dream case scenario for a lot of publishers. If you find that team, lock it. That's just
lock them down.
Yeah, lock them down.
Non-stop night guys, that's all tied down now, then, is it?
No, the guys did an amazing job with Non-Stop Night, and obviously we're super interested in partnering and working with them in the future games as well. Obviously they did a really awesome job, and it's just like a handful of guys in a small office with a sauna and in Finland, and they did.
Stop making all the best games. It's annoying. Open up a bit.
Yeah, I mean those guys, they come from a background of Rovio Tampere office, which got shut down, and they formed their company afterwards, and they're awesome guys, and they have experience on mobile, and they think alike, so they work really coherently as a team, and I think that's in a situation like that, you're saying like, hey, I'm totally interested in your next game. Let's talk about what do you want to do after this. So those type of situations, as a publisher, when you see that, you should go to the talks with those.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's all about the team. I mean, there's a lot of overhead that goes into spinning up one of these relationships on both sides, understanding each other's tech, understanding who the players are on each side, what they like to hear, what are the turn-ons, what's the creative dialogue. So if it's working, it just makes sense to keep doing it. If it's not working, it makes sense to go your separate ways. But we really, whether or not we set up a multi-game deal or an investment or something that is a step towards an investment, via triggers in the deal, we always intend to do more than one game. We're not going to go into business with a team when we're just like, okay, we'll do this one game and then we'll never work with them again, because that's not really a scalable model, I don't think, in today's free-to-play market.
Okay, fair enough. We've got only a couple of minutes left before we wrap up. I've got some more questions, but I'm going to throw it out there, see if anybody's got a question for these guys. Your last chance to ask a question. Well, there's a hand at the back. I can just about see it through the light.
Thank you. Hey guys, it's Sam from V2 Games. I had a quick question around the idea of what really excites a publisher around a game is, hey, if everybody in the office is playing it, then we know we're onto something. And we had that happen to us. One of our games was picked up by a publisher because, we sent it to them and everybody in the office was playing it, and, they went on call with us and they said 20 people tried it. But what happens if the game that you're pitching is for a different target market than the people in the office playing the game? What if you're making a game for females 35 plus and everybody at the office testing it is, between 20 and 35 males? How does the evaluation process look like then?
That's a good question. Like for us, the answer to that is kind of simple. We at Flaregames, we mostly, if you look at what we published, are like RPG, role-playing games, strategy games, and the reason why we focus on those is because we love and breathe those type of games. So obviously we can get excited about them, and every single body in the Flaregames office, they play those type of games, and you know that's it. But if we get a casual game, obviously there's a bigger challenge of that picking up. If let's say that game is a puzzle game, and not a lot of people in the office is loving puzzle games. But I believe that if the game is good enough and has that level of accessibility that you really start having fun, even if that's not your type of a game. I believe if it's powerful enough, if the game is fun enough, it'll transcend demographics even within an office. It's just, it will blow through, and I've seen that happen so many times in different game companies.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. Have you got any further question? Oh, there's a gentleman here in the front. Almost lost you there. Oh, someone over there as well. Questions lovely place.
I snuck in. Sorry about that.
Yeah, cheeky.
I was just wondering, I mean, listening to Henry and then listening to the panel on the second time, I'm just wondering whether, the word publisher is really correct anymore. It sounds like you guys have such a varied mix of skills, such a varied mix of services that you're providing. It sounds like there's such a varied mix of credibility amongst the people you hire in your own companies to work with people. You have ops people and development people. I think words like incubator have been used. You sound like coaches in some ways and mentors. Is the role of a publisher becoming more like, it's almost like a joint venture in some ways, or you're becoming a partner in a classic sense?
That's the word, partner. That is the word. I mean, it was actually, so I was tasked with putting together a presentation based on my first month at Scopely, and this is September of 2012. And I had one slide, and it basically was like, we're not a publisher, we're a partner. Because at least back then, you're right, your point is right. And back then, no one liked the word publisher because there's a lot of baggage that comes with publishers, and rightfully so, to be honest. I don't think that the publisher-developer relationship has been a healthy one in our industry all the time. I do believe that it can and should be, and publishers like IGG and Flare and Scopely, I think, are doing things the right way. But I do think, yes, it is, the word I like to use is partner. I mean, we don't really love the word publisher. It is a catch-all, and it works, and it's what people understand, but I'm right there with you, Brian.
Yeah, and I would say, like, we've been internally, we use a lot of word co-development, which is, we're kind of a co-developing publisher, because there's so much stuff that we do these days as publishers that it's actually, like, especially projects that we take co-op early on, we're sparring the guys, we're giving them consultation on their design and everything, so we're part of the development in a way, quite often, and it's more and more less just throwing money in a general direction. It's actually caring about the success of the game and making the game more fun, and that's more or less, shifting towards more and more towards co-development, I would say. I
think rebranding is a good idea. Why don't we change Ad Network to Sales Friend as well, and that could make those feel more approachable. So one final question from the gentleman with the beard here.
Hey, I was wondering if you guys found value in taking your mobile titles to other platforms like Steam or PlayStation Network, and possibly vice versa.
Anybody looking cross-platform? We're all mobiles.
I would say, like I said, I was in the other panel just before I came here, and Oscar asked that, does the future look bright for indie devs? And I think, like, I hope that the platforms, mobile platforms themselves, like Apple App Store and Google Play, would start looking more like Steam, because of some of the stuff that the Valve is doing with Steam. I just wish some of the tools were available. So obviously, that's super interesting. I'm getting pitches from indie devs who are just pushing their game. They originally did it for mobile, but they're like, hey, we did this, because it's Unity, we did a PC version, so we're pushing it out in Steam to learn how people like to play the game. So that's something that obviously, as a publisher, you can't say no to that anymore. You're like, okay, you guys can do that. I don't know how to help you that, but let's see the learnings, and we can help with the mobile publishing side. But I truly hope that in the future we'll see somewhere in a laboratory they're working on features like Steam has more. I hope that would be the future. But yeah, we're definitely not like being agnostic to that anymore. Like oh no, let's not talk anymore. Obviously, that's just learning from a different platform, even if it's a different control scheme quite often. So, but doesn't matter.
Okay. Right, I think we're over time, so can we have a round of applause for our wonderful panel here? Thank you very much, guys. It was very good, very impressive.